Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another online event by VII Foundation, which, as always, is brought to you with help of our partners from Photo Wings. My name is Ziya Gafic, and I'm here to host two wonderful people, Kira Pollack and Christopher Morris. They will both introduce themselves, but I have to say that Kira led and held major positions at New York Times, Vanity Fair, and is now working on super exciting project with Christopher Morris. Christopher Morris is one of the founding members of the VII Photo Agency. And today we're going to discuss archives, importance of it, what role they play in legacy of a photographer. And I think Chris is a perfect example of it. With his career spanning over 40 years. I'm talking from Sarajevo and from our office in Sarajevo. And just talking about archives, just two important components. I'm sitting about 200 meters from National Library, which in 92 was burned, and roughly 6 million books and archives of all sorts, manuscripts and so on, have been burned. And behind me is a part of archives of our dear colleague who tragically died last year, Paul Lowe. So much of how archives are important. I would like to invite Chris and Kira to briefly introduce themselves and contextualize this new kind of collaboration. You obviously collaborated during your time at the Time magazine, but now this is very different. And so I would like to invite you to briefly introduce yourself. Kira?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming. I'm Kira Pollack, and I've worked for 25, 30, maybe 30 years. I don't know. It's a long time, but I started at the New York Times Magazine. I was a photo editor there for Kathy Ryan. Then I was the director of photography at Time, which is where I met Christopher Morris, although I've always been a very big admirer of his work. And then I went to Vanity Fair. I was the creative director there. And a few years ago, I started getting into this idea of archives and how important they are, especially photojournalism. And I reconnected with Chris, who was going through his archive. And I've been doing a number of fellowships, one that I did at Stanford, and now I'm at Harvard. And I'm like digging into the technology that might be useful for archives, and we were experimenting with Chris's work as case studies. So that's kind of the background of how we started working together.
Chris?
Go ahead, Chris.
Okay, here I am. I'm Christopher Morris. I'm a photographer. I know Kira well. I went through many different iterations at Time magazine. I started in pursuing a contract in 1989, basically. Through the 80s, I built my career up. I went to two different schools. I got a scholarship to ICP. I'll try to make this quick, but I fell into Black Star. I understood the magazine photojournalism. It was kind of like I entered at the tail end of the film era. So I basically ended up amassing a huge archive, and it's completely different than today. Back then, you had to understand the craft of shooting film, the fact that you're putting a roll of film, and you have no clue if your camera's working. You have no clue. Everything's manual focus, manual exposure, and people should understand a transparency, a slide. You could not a half a stop overexposed, half a stop underexposed. That was your max latitude. So if you missed that exposure, it was immediately by the people who edited your film thrown in the trash. It's a reject. So you had to survive in a competitive industry, as competitive as is now. It only supported globally, maybe 20 photographers, 30 photographers that globally worked for the magazines. And I'm talking all regions. That's kind of what VII and the foundation that has developed we're trying to counter, because to allow other societies to document themselves. But back then it was very closed because it was very expensive. So long story short, I've ended up this massive archive, and I always worked. It was always job after job after job, and I never had time to ever look at anything. I never had time to come back and people would just say, here are your selects. These are your 20 best. And I'm going to show you something I discovered when I was going through my archive. And I don't know if it's best now if I start my presentation, probably. Just to kind of, or if that, is that where we're at?
I would
But
like, if I can,
the one key thing before I get into it, what basically has happened when COVID came. Prior to that, I never looked at my material because I
So
was
I'm
always
just-
working on the next job, the next job, the next job, the next job, the next assignment. But I call them jobs. I didn't treat them as jobs. I'm very passionate about the blessing that I'm doing the craft that I love. Every job I gave my heart and 1000%. I love the craft of photography, if it's sports or whatever. So to maintain that level, COVID put a stop to it. And it put a stop to me in the mentally that tomorrow I could be dust. I could end up in a hospital. And I realized all that work was for what? Nobody is going to be able to unscramble it. So the past 5 years, and that's kind of where we are at today with Kira.
before you start your keynote, I would actually like to add something to that. With COVID, but also with specifically because you live in Florida, the elements are sometimes against you. So I just want to, and this is also for our audience, because we will obviously take your questions, so maybe something to think about. So in this specific situation, we have your archive, which spans 40 years, basically pretty much every important historical moment in the past 40 years is behind you, be that on chromes, negatives, or drives. And this is kind of a question for both of you as well, is there's a practical component to what do you physically do with this archive? Well, actually, how do you actually create an archive from it? Because until it's actually digitized, keyword captioned, and sorted, it's impossible. It's sort of impenetrable fortress, and as such, useless, right? So I'm just curious to hear, what are the concerns, both when it comes to preservation of it physically, but also how does that physical, how that material transcends into your legacy, and what happens to it, or what will happen to it? So I think this goes for both.
I mean, that's why we're here today. We're going to show you, it's what I call a living archive.
Yeah.
Okay.
Technology has changed. The archives have always been these kind of like institutions where it's stored away and you have to log on, Library of Congress or where, and then you get these single images. And when I first started this whole process, that's kind of what I was thinking of, picking out the best images and archiving that, and just kind of rejects were rejects. But I understand it, going forward, it's kind of a useless, it doesn't work that way anymore. And technology, it's there for us to help us create a living archive. But the key is to this is the creator of that archive, be it anybody. And what I've discovered is the oral, my mind, when I open up a box of film that I've never seen, and you pick it up and you look at that slide for the first time, and it's an original, it was there, those light photons are off that thing. Your mind opens up, and I realized I need to speak this, I need to film it. And I've been doing it in different iterations. And now with AI, it can give me a transcribed text instantly of what I'm speaking. And I'm not even having to actually even save that recording. You could even do it in real time if you wanted to. But what I'm realizing is I have to create with each image that I scan, I have to create, I call it like a flower, like a daisy, that scan, that image, and it has all these petals of information that I need to feed to put into one folder, into one filing cabinet. And that information, 6 months from now, AI is going to do something with that more than it can do with what I'm giving it. All I'm saying is I'm trying to future-proof my archive while using me before I'm dust, and not using what other people think about my work. Why? It's interesting. Why did I take that picture? Why did I stand that way? Why did I crop that way? Who gave me permission to stand there? what moral right do I have to stand over some dead child? And
Yeah.
and I have to explain myself.
I think also,
So here we can really dive into it, and that's
yeah,
kind of where we are.
I feel like the physical thing is a really big question too, right? Because I mean, you know, this, what we're talking about is going to be one slice of contextualizing this work, which is what we're doing. And that to me is very interesting. As a photo editor for a long time, I worked with so many photographers and sent them to incredible, you know, they've made incredible pictures. What did we do? We picked 5 and we published them. And there are thousands of other pictures that never saw the light of day. I know that the reason that we picked those pictures on that week would have been because the story was X. It wasn't necessarily, this is the best work from that. So I know there's so much work, and I would estimate that 99% of these archives have never been seen. So there's a physical work, which is the analog for the photographers like Chris that have the analog, and then the digital. And everyone thinks digital is so much easier. It's not. I've talked to so many photographers. It's not like the digital. Yes, it's on hard drives. You put it on your RAID system or whatever, but people are building servers because the files are so big. I mean, it's very, very hard, all of that. The preservation piece is huge. The actual footprint of one of these archives, I mean, you can see Chris, it's all over his house. And what, you know, when I was doing the Stanford Fellowship, which that's when I wrote the piece in the Washington Post, what I was so blown away by, I just did not know this problem. I didn't know that this was happening out here. I worked with photographers. I didn't really see this because photographers also have like rightfully fought for the rights to their work for all of these years. Well, now the IP is theirs. I mean, that's great for all of you photographers, but it also means, like, I think everyone thinks, oh, Time Magazine owns all the work, and they take care of it in some beautiful library. No, we had nothing. Chris, all of the work he did, he has it in his house. So what I think is, what I was surprised by, and I think that the footprint piece, you know, you want your work, it's like your legacy, and it's not one story, it's a million stories, it's an arc of work. You think that that's going to go to a really important institution, and there are really important institutions, the Briscoe Center, Ransom, you know, the Center for Creative Photography, like there are Library of Congress, but the photo curator at the Library of Congress told me that he gets a call once a week by photographers that want to donate their archive to the library. And he was like, this week I've already gotten 2. And that was, they for an entire archive, they're certainly bringing in, acquiring a lot of different collections and portfolios, but they acquire one entire archive every 5 years. And an entire archive could be, you know, 800,000 images. I mean, it's a lot for an institution to take on, to curate. So what we're trying to figure out too is like, what is the legacy? What is the thing that is the essence of Chris? And how can he contextualize that? And how can we do that at scale? So Chris, you should just start showing your work, I think, because I know
Yes, Chris, that brings us to your keynote. So go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to do a keynote here. So it's ready. Is that it already up?
Yep.
You pulled it up? Okay. And I should, hold on. Let me hit escape. It started. Let's bring it up to the beginning. And then I'll hit play. So basically, this is kind of what I kind of discovered, the breadth of my my travels and archives. In each one of these places, I have extensive, they're just not like one-off trips. I have extensive archives on all these regions of the world. And this is just kind of, everybody knows this work, my Chechen work, if they follow me. This is all just for me, just to kind of show you the diversity. This is all my digital archive. I have an extensive archive of world leaders from around the world. So it's not just the United States, it's all over Africa, Middle East, Europe, just because of having the publication like Time, it gave me a lot of access. This is one of the last assignments I did for Kira. This is when they had to stop covering the White House. They only did a year of Obama. It was interesting. Time magazine was such a powerhouse that they would get access one of the few publications that would be given complete access. You kind of like staff. The picture on the right is for National Geographic. And again, I own all these archives. And that's one reason I pushed so hard to get this kind of access, was because not for the publication, it was more because I knew I would own the archive and the historic value of these images. And there's stories and backgrounds that I want to create and narrate. And what I've discovered are the outtakes are also, because these were selects that I had made. This is all digital work. The same room just shows you the access that having a company like the name Time Magazine, it granted me great access. This is early on in my career. This is just right when I started, just prior to I started my contract. I made it down to Panama before the invasion. And this is what's fascinating, is in my archive, I found these more interesting than the actual images of how the library, these are all dupe slides. This is the invasion of Panama. And this is kind of a brief to show you how my folders were kept at Black Star. You'll see a numbering system, September of '93. That's all the Russian parliament siege. And these are all images. And if you see there, they don't have anything on them. Yeah, I have a lot of stuff to go through. These were selects pulled from the library of the Panama invasion. This is stuff I randomly found from Black Star, that it was just random stuff from all over the world, everything from Subway 81 to East Berlin. It was all stuff that Black Star had scanned that I found in boxes. And none of this has all just been discovered in the last year. So I've had to sort through all that. These are early on in my career. I started in the Philippines because I knew it well. I grew up there as a child. So it's one of the first places I went. This is me just going through my files on my light table. This is kind of what me doing some test scans initially. Some Imelda Marcos in New York and Marcos there. These are my filing cabinets. And again, I only live a few kilometers from the sea, so I'm in danger of sea level rise. So everything's on restaurant shelves, so I can wheel them up and get them out. What I discovered was I have a mountain, everything that was in file, all the boxes, empty slide boxes, these were rejects. And I was getting ready to I have mountains of this stuff. This is the stuff. And I realized this is several rolls of film from Sarajevo. And only one image was pulled from these rolls of film from this event that I found in the files. So this is when I clicked, and this was only a few months ago. I clicked that all these images, I need to scan everything. These are all rejects. Why should these end up in the trash? And now with AI, it can help me sort. AI can read the slime out.
Chris, explain what a reject is, like what you're saying about a reject.
Well, the reject is when these were all selects. Here a prime example. This is the first Gulf War color negative. Only one image is marked there, the blue one. Everything else is a reject. Nothing's printed.
A reject meaning that the editor at Time chose one and the rest were outs. Like they didn't.
Yeah, they're not. It's like that slide box. So I have mountains of boxes that have never been seen, but only by the first. Black Star would edit it and Time would edit it. So these were selects. These are in the filing cabinets. These are my known portfolios, but I did not choose these images. These were chosen by other people. Either an editor at Time or an editor, usually Yukiko Lanois, which was Howard Chapnick's, or On Stock, they would edit. So, and then when I would come back from a trip, they would say, here are your selects. And all I would really look at were my selects. I wouldn't really go back and pour through the material. The only work I really could look at was stuff like my Chechen work, because I could take the contact sheets at home. When I would end up coming home, I would get mountains of these empty boxes, and I was spending 11 months a year on the road. I had no time. I didn't want to look at the pictures. It was the last thing I wanted to do. This is one of my contact sheets. So I've experimented with different ways of doing, because I've scanned all this Chechen, every negative, because I realized every image has value. Why is that one image a select? And I realized, so I've scanned all my Chechen material in multiple ways. I filmed all the contact sheets. I fed every frame through the Fuji, and just to try. Here's that scene, that famous scene with Jim and I with the same kid, where Jim came up after. You'll see the composition. It's fascinating. It's in Grozny.
May I just, so Chris, just to clarify, so you are basically scanning. Can you just hold on for a second? So
Yeah.
the idea is to scan everything, right? And I think
Yeah. I have 6 of the. You're watching me scan the Chechen negative. This is how I move it through, and you'll notice it's interesting. So I take a diptych of it because I get a new composition. What was the frame before, and what's the frame after? I have 6,000 images from. So far from Russia, the Chechen and Russia. I did 1,000 of the color transparencies, but only the stuff that was in the file. So you'll see how this is the Fuji.
Exactly. Can you just?
And so I'm recording. You'll see the
workflow?
Fuji's recording. I'm making a 4K video of the negative. So I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but it's like, man, I only want to feed this through one time. So why am I just going to take a scan of it? I'm going to do a bit of everything. And this is kind of what it looks like when you, so this is the video file I get. Oh my God. So it's not sharp because I'm at 24 frames a second. I should be at 60. But the point is me of trying to create new content that I know AI will help me. And this is when you invert it. This is kind of what it looks like when they're inverted. When I flip that, all I do is in Photoshop, you just invert it. So it's a great way to even screen your negatives.
So I need to ask you to clarify a little bit on, well, for those who don't know, until very recently, scanning was incredibly expensive. If you wanted to have high-end scans from Imacon or drum scanners, it was incredibly expensive, slow. You needed a technician.
Anybody can do it. You can do it with your iPhone.
Well, exactly.
You can do it with a 10 megapixel camera.
Can you just explain?
You need to just make sure your capture device is balanced and steady, and you have some kind of macro lens to get close.
But can you explain it how you do it? Because we're talking about.
Well, you're looking at it on the screen here. This is a Fuji setup on a stand. It's the Fuji GFX 100, and it's got a bellows extension, which is you don't really need. You can do it with a macro lens, and it's like a Schneider 90. And I have it on, I believe, F8. And then I just sit there and I feed it through. And now I have foot pedals. I have 2 foot pedals because I have a second Fuji to do the mount, because I was having to do them twice. Once you have this thing dialed in and it's focused, it's almost like you want to put super glue on it. You don't want it to move.
Chris, how many slides do you think you can do in one day with this setup?
3,000. Easy. Maybe more, just depends. It's just like you're working in a photomat. Feed, clip, feed, clip, feed, clip. And that's what I'm going to show you how I do. Later, I'll show you how I do the pre-scan. These are Russian commanders they have the Russian FSB trapped in Grozny. So it's interesting to feed the negatives through. It's just finding new ways to tell stories. Here's me. These are all my Chechen. This is all my analog work. So you see the pencil markings on there. Only one image was printed. So what about all these other images? Are they valueless? Should they just be ignored? What do I do with them? So I'm realizing technology can now enable me to. You're seeing all these images. Like, I'm going to stop you're seeing all these images, but you're hearing my voice. If I'm dead, nobody knows what to do with all this stuff. And what's interesting is AI can read the slide mounts. It can read and transcribe. It can write captions. It can see what's in the photos. I mean, Kira's going to show you a little bit more of that. So this is me just going through the volume. Like I said, I have 30,000 Yugoslav images from 9 years of that conflict, the breakup of Yugoslavia, and how I have to archive and catalog it.
30,000 images, I estimate, is 4% of Chris's archive.
So, and it's just, and it's global, and it reaches.
Just talk about where you are, what we're looking at, Chris.
Well, that's it. Okay, I'm going to stop share. Did I
you're
stop
done?
share?
Okay.
Are we back to me? Yeah.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, like, You're showing
So-
so many different.
No, it's just, it goes on and on and on and on and on and on and on. I mean, let me share one more thing because I forgot. I just want to show you this. Just one last thing. I'll share one last thing and then I'll stop it because I think I've gone beyond my 10 minutes, correct?
You're close. Yeah.
Yeah, give me just 1 second. Let me just go back up here where I left off. Am I sharing? Yeah, I'm sorry. So you go through all this, my America, North Korea, and then January 6th, you're actually seeing I need to go full frame here. So you don't see or hit play. There. It's better, sorry. I have all these world leaders, this is Berlusconi in the palace. I'm the only photographer in there because I was working for a fashion magazine and I speak English. I had so many countries have given me access because they see that I've been with Bush, I've been with the princess. You get one and it leads to others. And before long, I was actually getting contacted by these people themselves to photograph them and their families. So the whole falling out here is I own my archive. I refuse to sign, even with Monaco. Every time I went in the palace, the people there had a contract for me to sign. I refused to sign it. And it just dives in, the whole fashion, everything. It's just such an extensive archive. Come back to me. Yeah, thank you.
You mentioned AI a few times, and so finally now we have these two beautiful components. The setup you showed us, the Fuji setup, allows us to create high-end, high-quality scans at a fraction of time and price compared to old technologies. And then we have an AI. Everyone sort of gets goosebumps when you mention AI in the context of documentary photography and as generative AI and so on and so forth. But here it's used and it will be used for something else. So could you expand on that, Kira or Chris?
Yeah, just real quick. The whole thing with AI is something that totally freaked me out. What Michael Christopher Brown was doing and with in the dabble, it's like, no way, this whole of filling in. But since Photoshop was invented, we've been using AI in a sense of how it interprets those photons. What I've understood is the power that it can help me in getting down into text and stuff and to visualize and pick out things. That's what Kira's going to dive into, is actually how you can use AI to help see in the photograph even things you in your subconscious aren't understanding that is happening. And I'll be quiet from there. Kira.
Okay.
Can you sort of expand on that intersection between AI and archives?
Yeah, I mean, I think, yes, that's what I've been exploring. And I would say that we're learning a ton. It's not like necessarily a silver bullet. I'm not here to tell you to drink the AI Kool-Aid, but AI is a very broad term. And I think that, there are a lot of people in the conversation around disinformation and AI and the generative tools and, the false pictures that are flying around in real time. I also looked at it and say, well, what about all of the fact-based, which is a weird term to say, but apparently that's a term now, a fact-based picture, which is like the only pictures I ever worked in. But okay, fact-based picture. You need to lock those up because anyone can make a picture from civil rights, from anything you want. And like, how do we know that it's authentic? And that was one of the things I was looking at Stanford at Starling, which was like these digital images. How do we know? How are we valid? How are they verified? And I think that's one of the points with Chris is like the authentication and the storytelling aspect is very important in this day and age to get that work in there beyond like a simple caption, because it authenticates, it's like another layer of authentication. So the AI, I'm going to show you kind of like where I started and how Chris and I will both talk about this together. But it's like I started in a very kind of basic, maybe I'll start presenting, sorry. Okay. Are you seeing that?
Yep.
Great, sorry. So this was the piece that I wrote that from Starling. But I just wanted to show these before I started the AI stuff because Chris, before the, Chris lives in Tampa. So all of these pictures are in Tampa with him in his home studio. And there was a huge hurricane, as there always are in the fall. And he had to clear out his archive because it was going to go, like the surge lines were going to be really high. So he had to get all of his work up above those lines. He couldn't, literally, what do you do 2 days before a hurricane? So I asked him to just make videos of what he was and I think it's just interesting to see this. So these are
actually,
there
were actually 2 hurricanes.
All of those slides that he was showing you before. He's doing this all by himself. It's pretty, there's just a couple of these. This is Chris, I mean, chime in, but this is like
those are hard drives.
I'm shelves that are built so that
in the kitchen
everything is up high, as high as possible. And this is was it 48 hours of straight work that you were doing all this before this came?
You can move your mouse cursor.
This one's it.
Yeah, this is a thing of hard drives. So in 2003, I started shooting hard drives. Shooting digital. So those are my early hard drives.
Go ahead, Chris. Sorry.
That's okay. They only hold 160, 200.
These are all hard. You see what I do is
I label on the sides. I take screenshots of what's inside.
Bush 2004. So I'm gonna try to carry a bunch of these in. There you go.
And here I had a U-Haul. This is where I loaded everything into my office. I was going to bring all this stuff to higher ground. You'll see even the filing cabinets are on restaurant shelves. They can be I ended up finding out I have nowhere to take the truck because everywhere is going to be underwater. So I realized I don't want to put my archive and have it floating down the street. They close all the parking garages, especially for trucks the cities block them from the citizens, the shopping malls. It's insane. They don't want people escaping the floods. It's so the police set up barricades so you can't even use businesses, parking garages. You'll see I have a scooter in there, all kinds of stuff. Yeah.
So I just like to show that because I think it just shows the scale and what really, the fires in LA this year, there's you've got to protect your work from all of this. And it's really expensive. And so that's something we've been looking at, just what do you save? What are the things that you need to really, what are the gems? So this is just, I've been a fellow here at the Shorenstein Center. And I just want to explain, I think for all the photographers on the phone, on the line, they understand that there are so many different pieces to this. Some photographers are, have only shot digital their whole lives. So that's, one aspect of it. But for the photographers that need to digitize their work at a high res, that's a big piece of it. Another thing is the contextualization, which is all manual right now, typing in pictures to files, which I can't believe. Third is the security. We know that that's a very important piece of these images are safe. And storage, which, if you're scanning these high res, what are these high res files you're scanning, Chris, these TIFFs?
Well, it's 100 megabytes. Each file is 100, but you have the raw. You end up with around 200 megabytes per file, per scan.
So it's, he's scanning 30,000 images, then.
But when you do the math, Kira always is nervous with that. I'm the complete opposite. To me, that's nothing. The hard drives are so cheap. I use the Western Digital Surveillance Purple because they're extremely fast. You can get 4 terabyte for under $100. And that 4 terabyte, you're going to hold 5,000, 6,000 Fuji high res. It's to me, it's not an issue.
Chris has it all
Especially when
figured out.
dealing. But you don't need such a high res. You could
No,
have
you
it at
no,
40.
no,
You could have.
no, but you need to like, you need to save it in 3 different places. You have to like, I mean, you know,
No,
it's-
one file I figure will have around about 1 gigabytes of information in terms of the audio scrape, the PDFs, the Word docs, all the stuff that I need to help with some other technology that's going to come and be able to turn that into whatever they want to turn it into.
Right. Okay, so this part is what I've been doing on this fellowship. I'm just saying the preservation, the storage, and the security is like obviously complicated, but not what we're doing. So this is where I started. And the question is like, okay, you know, my daughter who looks on my iPhone for her friends and an outfit she may have worn a year ago or whatever she's looking for, like she can find that no problem. And I was like, why can't that apply? That's AI, right? Why can't that apply to an archive? And so we know that, you know, AI can see objects and recognize them. This is a cat. But like, what does AI see in this picture? And so what I've been doing in this exploration, and actually when I started this exploration before the Harvard fellowship, and we're working with this fantastic engineer, Gregor Hochmuth, and you know, I was asking him like, well, what do you think we can, like keywords, you know, what can we get out of this picture? Because we're talking about such a huge scale of information. Like, and of course, Chris is sitting right there. He can tell us what's in this picture. So, but I wanted to see like what the AI doesn't see anything, I know, but like what the AI would interpret from a picture like this. So he's like, great, let's look. So we took 14 of Chris's stories, all from all different years, like probably, I don't know, 30 pictures per story. And each story, you know, it's like several stories from the fall of Yugoslavia, the wars, the North Korea, we've got January 6th, we've got Iraq invasion and Guantanamo, just number of different things from different years. So just looking at this one, this is all Iraq. So this is what, you know, kind of, these are the things we want AI to come back. I want to say this large language model to come back with. Tell us about the subjects, the people, the action, the setting, the composition, the keywords, the colors and lighting, mood and atmosphere, symbolism, historical and cultural context, and description. And it was kind of like our interest was just like, what's it going to do? Is it going to, how good is it going to be? What can it tell us? And this is not, you know, the art in any work with large language models is in the prompting, and the people that really understand how to do that is like, it's really, really interesting how you're asking the large language model is, and what, like how important that is for what you want extracted out of it. So I'm not going to show you all the prompts because they go on forever, but this is what we were looking for. So here's a picture. So I'm going to go through a couple pictures of Chris's and just show you, but also we've been, for anyone that you know, these large language models, you know, you have a number of different kinds of models. Like you have from all these different, you know, you have OpenAI has ChatGPT, and Google has Gemini, and Claude, you know, with Anthropic. And so we've tried them across all models. And what we've found is that Gemini, the Google model, has been the most, has the most depth probably to it, because obviously it's been trained on a lot of pictures. So here's a picture. We gave the large language model the file name. So there's no metadata in this picture, but there's a file name. So the large language model has the file name, and then the prompts were, tell us about the subject, the people. Sorry, Chris, you.
No, I'm good.
Okay,
I'm listening.
sorry.
It's fantastic.
Okay, so I'm just going to read this over the picture, but like this is a more recent one that we did. So we started this over a year ago, and it's just gotten better and better and better. I'm going to read it to you. I don't expect you to read it, but this is how much information comes back to us from the AI. This is like basically however you're going to ask it for something, it comes back with the answers. They're not always right, but I would say, Chris, like most of the time, they have been accurate. And that is the really important piece of this, is that we're working with a photographer that understands and knows his pictures, so we can.
One thing I would like to interject, the most important for me of all these was symbolisms, because as a photographer, I work in symbolisms and metaphors of trying to tell a story, because here you're trying to compose the world. Why am I cropping a certain way, or why I'm telling? So what I discovered is these symbolisms in my mind as I'm walking with these soldiers. I know to turn and I know to frame a certain way. It's inside me. So when AI started giving me these symbolisms and they linked up with what I was seeing in my mind exactly, it confirmed to me that it's understanding the visions and the little trickeries and gimmicks that we do with our artists to convey certain moods. So that was, I just want to interject that there.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, okay. So I wasn't expecting you to read all of that, but I'm just going to read, I mean, not Chris, but just like the audience. But I'm going to read what it said about people, what it came back about people in this picture. 5 unidentified U.S. Army soldiers. They're wearing desert camouflage uniforms, PASGT or MICH helmets with goggle straps, interceptor body armor, and tactical load-bearing equipment. They are heavily armed. The soldier in the foreground carries an M4 carbine with an optical sight and a PEQ-2 laser module. The soldier second from the right appears to be carrying an M249 squad automatic weapon. Other soldiers carry M16, M4 variant rifles, some with M203 grenade launcher attachments. Their expressions, though partially obscured by gear, convey alertness and seriousness. So, is all that information so critical for caption? No, maybe not, but like Chris would never give me all that information.
I'm the worst caption writer in the world.
Chris is the worst caption writer.
To me, I'm blown away by that.
Chris loves
just by the fact that you can write a novel about one photograph if you want, with prompting and keying and working with it to try to really pull out something. That just fascinated me.
And the weapons, it really knows. It seems like, your photograph weapons are a very
not important to me. It's not important to me, but it's important to people out there. It's important to war crimes, all those little details.
Yes. So, then I can take all of this and say, write me an AP caption, and it writes a great caption. That's what we've been experimenting with more lately. This is another picture. I'm just going to do a couple of these, but again, that's the file name.
Read one of the symbolisms ones if you can, just see, or even just see how it.
This one maybe this one is good. Okay, so sorry. This is, again, just to show you like the breadth of it. Here's the symbolism. The raised hand of the women are a universal symbol of surrender, non-aggression, or helplessness. The armed soldiers represent military force and occupation. The doorway symbolizes a breached threshold between a private civilian space and the public militarized zone. The act of civilians emerging from their home under duress symbolizes the disruption and intrusion of war on everyday life. I feel like there are better ones, Chris, than that one.
There are better ones, but it's just, it's helping. It's really making the picture become more alive, because we're bombarded with billions of images. Just try to even watch on your Instagram. There's all these fast moving. It's just like, wow. If you really want to dive into an image, you should be able to click onto it and be able to extract much more than the old method. Go ahead, Kira.
So this one, just under people, this is how it describes that. 4 U.S. Army soldiers from the 3rd Infantry Division are visible, clad in desert camouflage uniforms, helmets, and tactical gear, and armed with rifles, including what appears to be M249 saw. Chris, on the left.
It says SAW M42, but it also identified 3rd Infantry Division by his logo on his helmet. I didn't give that information. It's picking it out. It knows it's the 3rd Infantry Division because of the helmet.
An Iraqi
this one's just going by the caption.
This is an Iraqi man with a mustache wearing a white tank top and dark pants is emerging from a doorway holding the light-colored striped shirt. He has an anxious or distressed expression. Behind him in the doorway, an Iraqi woman wearing a traditional blue like dress and a patterned headscarf, stands with both hands raised in a gesture of surrender or compliance. Her expression appears fearful. And so that was another thing that we were interested in, like, oh, it's reading these emotions and it's interpreting that too. Not necessarily like, do we need that for caption? But it was interesting that it was seeing that. It was also seeing like power dynamics, you know,
even on this picture, I don't know if it picked it up, and many viewers will never. If you look at the one soldier, there's a very telling thing going on in this image. If you look on the soldier to the right at his feet, you see 2 empty shotgun shells. The guy on the left that you can't see, he's just breached the door with a shotgun. So AI, it's like they've discharged their weapons into the front door of this guy's house and blown open the door handle to open it. They didn't knock on the door. So there are little subtleties in there. But me as a photographer, I know that's there. I didn't see it when I shot it, but later on when you're editing, you're saying, yeah, there's the shell, but you were there when he shot the gun. So whatever, it's interesting. I don't know if it picked up on the shell casings. No, that's okay. But I think in one of them it had, because we had brought it up. But when we were doing the testings, I had brought this up before.
Yeah. So this is another one. This is the last one I'm going to show, and then we'll go on to the oral history stuff that we've been doing. But this one was really interesting to me because it, just looking at the composition, a unique element. So, because we asked it to come back with composition. And so it says, unique element is the blurred figure in the foreground whose presence strongly implies the presence of armed forces in the context of a military operation. The slightly out of focus soldier is an important element, which is so interesting. Like, to me, that is like, you take that soldier out of it, it's a very different picture. Like, that's a way that, again, is authorship. Chris photographs that way often, getting that context. So I just think that picking that up too, it can kind of do, you know, whatever you're asking it to see, it's giving that back to you. That's what we were getting. So this was another piece. And this was when it, like, really, I'm showing you 3 different things. And so this was like, and Chris saying earlier that he, oral history and like this living archive idea, which I was very excited about, because pictures have so much more context, we all know, than what the caption is underneath it. And there's so much more information outside the frame. And I think it's like how Chris made those pictures. And, you know, you're not going to talk about that for every single thing in your archive, but let's see how it dissects and like disseminates actually his own words. So we started this part because we were like, okay, we have no metadata in the picture. This is what AI brings back to us. What if Chris gives us an audio context of what he was doing? So like for every single one of those stories, 14 stories, he gave us 3 to 5 minutes audio. And we put that, so then we prompted the AI to evaluate the collection again, like all those Iraq pictures, based on Chris's audio. And that was the prompting. And for the AI to ask Chris 10 questions about the pictures. And so I'm just going to read this, but this is what AI came back with. This is just like, so we literally took the audio, and it's a multimodal model. We just put the audio directly from, he had it on his phone. We got the file, we put it right into there. And then with the prompting, this is what it came back. His voiceover reveals a lingering bitterness, especially regarding the experience of the invasion and the feeling of being involved as a participant in a conquest rather than a liberation. This personal perspective conveyed through his deliberate choice of words and tone of voice significantly enriches and deepens our understanding of the images. The photographer's internal conflict regarding the nature of the intervention contributes layers of meaning to the visual record, particularly evident in images showing interaction between soldiers and Iraqi citizens. And then the understated but emotionally charged tone of his voice amplifies the image's impact, making the viewer privy to his subtle judgment of the events he witnessed. So we were like, whoa, like, I mean, this started, okay. So then we asked it, and part of the prompt was to ask Chris questions about the images. And these also, like, you know, I would prepare for a long time to come up with questions like this, but clearly the AI is trained around photojournalism and ethics. A lot of ethical questions are coming up. But here's one. The image showing the soldiers examining the deceased Iraqi man raises ethical concerns. Can you describe the circumstances surrounding this photograph and reflect on the ethical considerations you faced in documenting such a sensitive scene? How did you balance the need to document the reality of war with the respect due to the deceased? The images depict a wide range of scenes, from intimate moments with civilians to large-scale military operations. How did you decide which moments to capture, and what criteria guided your choices during the highly charged and dynamic period? This one, several photographs depict interactions between soldiers and Iraqi civilians. Describe your approach to photographing these encounters, paying particular attention to how you navigated the ethical complexities of capturing potentially vulnerable individuals in the midst of conflict. So Chris, you can talk about this, but we got these questions back, and Chris was like, these are so sophisticated and smart, I want to answer. So he went through all of them and recorded his answers. So I don't know if you want to talk about that, Chris, a little bit.
No, but some of them were a little hard and heavy, and I felt that I didn't want to answer them because of I didn't want to be involved in a lot of the things that in some countries would say that I did things unethically. And I'm talking about violating laws of certain countries because of the type of work I'm doing, the nature of my work. It's all the authorities. There's no authority that wants you there at the tip of the spear when they're killing people, even if it's the US military, Russian military, guerrillas. It's a very delicate thing of how you put yourself in those situations. So when AI comes back to me and asks me a question, one of them was, who gave you permission to stand in a morgue over dead children?
Yeah.
I end up answering those, but even here now, you hear me choking up. AI picks up on that.
Yeah.
It picks up that I'm distressed and I'm hurt and I have trauma, which was also a whole nother layer that we ended up to.
No,
So
yeah, I was like,
AI asking me questions, I like answering them, but some of them I have to censor myself because I don't want it to become. I'm involved in the VII Foundation and we train people, and
okay, wait, Chris,
whatever. It's the whole. That comes into all that. Yeah,
I'm going to show this one last example, and then
I
know because we're like 5 minutes of.
Sorry about that.
Left, so, okay, no. Absolutely. So this was the other thing that I was really interested in personally, of okay, you have this huge archive. What is the historical context? What is happening in the world that this picture is important? It's a bunch of military people in an office. This, kind of picture is all throughout Chris's archive. So just with the actual location, CENTCOM MacDill Air Force Base, February 25th, 2002, that's what we gave the large language model. And we asked, the prompting was all around this historical significance. And I'm going to read this one to you, and then I'll go to you, Chris, and you got to go. I know you have stuff to talk about in your studio, but actually I'm going to let you look at this picture when I read it. Okay, sorry. So it says, okay, this is what it came back with. This photograph was taken on February 25th, 2002, a pivotal moment in the early stages of the War on Terror. Less than 6 months after September 11, 2001 attacks, the United States was deeply engaged in Operation Enduring Freedom in Afghanistan, having toppled the Taliban regime in late 2001. This meeting at the headquarters of U.S. Central Command captures the key military and civilian leadership responsible for prosecuting that war. At this exact time, plans were being refined for major upcoming combat, such as Operation Anaconda, which would commence in Afghanistan just days later in early March 2002. Simultaneously, the Bush administration was intensively building the case for a military intervention in Iraq. The presence of senior Pentagon officials along CENTCOM's commands staff strongly indicates that this briefing likely covered both the ongoing war in Afghanistan and the advanced stages of strategic planning for the eventual invasion of Iraq, which would occur 1 year later. This image offers a rare, candid glimpse into the war room where the course of two longest wars in U.S. history was being charted. And it actually came back too with the names of everyone in the pictures. incorrectly identified Paul Wolfowitz, but everyone else was correct in the picture. So, I'm going to stop sharing, Zia, or I don't know if you can.
Yep.
Great.
So, yeah, as you can see, it's nowhere to look here, but yeah, the advantage I have these 6,000 Russia images. Who's going to sit there and put them in Photo Mechanic and add keywords? That's just not going to happen. I'm going to show you just real quick kind of my studio here, just to get you over my setup.
So just to give a little bit, I know we probably just have a couple minutes here because I know there's.
Yeah, you can, if anybody wants to speak up. Over there is my Fuji. And then you'll see back here is my pre-scan area. And I'll zoom in and I'm going to show you. You'll see I have it. And it's just with an iPhone. Hold on. I'm trying to find my zoom. You'll see it up there, my iPhone. Let's try to focus it somewhere. So I'm going to switch over to that now. I should switch.
Yeah.
Yeah. So here you are. So I realized all I do is I take a picture of the folder, and I actually did I've done pre things, and you'll see it has a lot of writing on it. And I realized that, so then then AI spits me out a PDF. It translates everything that's on there. And so here's the slide. And then what I do, and with the eCam, I'm not using the iPhone to record. I'm just using it as a web camera. And then, so with the eCam, I can take a screen recording of that folder, a screenshot, and it goes with the images. And then you can pull out the sheets that you're going to scan. So this is folder 38. I have 140 folders from Yugoslavia. And in this folder are 610 photographs, original photographs. So then I'm just going to randomly, hopefully there's nothing too graphic, I can grab a sheet. And so AI is looking at this, or at least I can, excuse me, let me zoom this.
You're capturing it.
It's kind of but it's not even capturing it until if I'm directed live to it, but at least I can be recording this. Let me come on over here.
But let me just say that this is like the beginning of a lab that we're starting, and we haven't actually figured out.
I have it mirror. I'm sorry, it's flipped. That's a mistake. I have to go in. I'm using the Black Magic. Normally it's not flipped, and I don't want to mess with this. So I can actually, I can make screen recordings. I can give a pre-idea of what's going to happen. And then I switch over to the next devices. Hold on, let me pull this up. Come back to me. So it's quite a simple and efficient process.
Well, we haven't exactly done it yet.
Well, we haven't fed anything into the AI.
Yeah.
Meaning to run the scans. But I know it's even my Russia material, all my Chechen material, I can do the same thing.
Yeah.
They're ready to go. It just needs to see what it's looking at, but we're trying to figure out how are we going to attach it. Right. The old method is attach it into the metadata. But do you want all that in the metadata outside of the basic? I feel it should just be a document that stays with it, a Word doc or PDF, or all the auto files, and so you end up with each image a little folder. It's the same way my archive is always kept. My digital archive is always kept that way. I have the card, so it says CM Bush, that date, all, and in there then I have a selects, boom, and those raws so I end up with 3-4 folders for one take. You have the JPEGs you transmit, you have the PSDs or TIFFs, and you have the RAWs. Mm-hmm. So I'm already set up.
No, Chris, I think one of the great things about working with Chris on all this is that he's very technical. You'll
see over here, I have a second Fuji that's here with another light table that I do the slide mount. That's where I do, because the slide mount is so important because it has a lot of the caption and information. And I have these 2 Pocket Wizard foot pedals, so I can just feed. And then once I'm in here, I'm just feeding them through. The only bottleneck is when originally I was tethering the camera to the computer and the hard drive. Is a mistake, is a slowdown. I just do it to the card and then dump it later and put them in the right place because it's unnecessary, I feel, to be tethered with the scan. That's it for the technical, and I'm done pretty much there. If anybody has any questions.
I do think we have a few minutes, Fiona, for questions. Would you like to? Okay, so here's a question from Shoban. I think this goes for both of you. How accurate is the tech on the contextualization piece? When the AI you're working with is offering analysis, what kind of surprises or challenges are you finding?
I'm not sure how accurate is the tech on the, or okay. The accuracy on the contextualization has been remarkably high. And I would say that, again, like I've been doing this over a year now. And I've been also testing across other models. And, I think that the most important thing is that I'm working with a photographer that is doing that work, is checking it, so it's not going to be 100%. It's not. But again, when I was thinking about how many of us have had, interns putting keywords into pictures for decades, it's what I'm saying is that there's definitely going to be it's not perfect, but I
find more human error in my keywording and spelling errors than any AI does. So,
but the surprises and challenges, I think that it's also really interesting. The prompting has been really interesting to see. I'm also working with a research assistant at Harvard and also a really great data scientist that has worked with computer vision for a long time. So the ethics, why is it picking that person out of the picture, the biases, there's a lot of that kind of stuff too, that of course we're looking at, but I'm surprised at the accuracy, but I think that it's not perfect for sure. It's Gemini that we're showing you. Gemini is Google's software. They just launched a new model yesterday, I think, but it's always, it's been very good. And I think, these big models, the ChatGPT and Gemini and Claude, and, they're black boxes. We have no idea what they've been trained on, so it's a foundation model. But when we have worked across them, the Gemini, for what we're doing with photojournalism, that's the most interesting. Okay.
There's a very interesting question from Eugene Richards. And I think this, again, goes for...
Eugene Richards. Won't this make photography?
Well, won't this make photographers with financial means in the end much more significant than those without? Well, that's a fantastic question, Gene. The financial lens. Everything, I don't know, in the sense of even in the financial end, just to be a photographer, but in today's world, in any society in the world, any kind of capture device is your camera, be it the oldest camera phone or whatever. In the sense of who's going to be able to access a computer to be able to access AI to help them or help them with their archives. But for me, I have a Fuji here. Originally, I was doing it with my original Canon 5D. Actually, my older iterations of cameras, you can get a $400 early iteration digital camera and do everything I'm doing here with great. And you don't need an expensive lens. You basically need a fixed cheap lens off of eBay for $100. So I may be reading Gene wrong in the sense of the financial, but my bank account is zero. I've struggled my whole, people think maybe I'm one of these well-off people, but
I think it's a really important.
Here what I was using, those pictures of the Sniper Alley, those close-ups were done with this. It's a 90 millimeter old EF lens, you can get all this stuff for like $200-300, and even you don't even need. You can just do it with the iPhones are good enough now to do all this archiving. The current iPhones are good enough for you don't just one thing could do it all for you. So I think it's kind of helping that all the societies. I've met so many people through our academy that don't have financial means. None of the people that I have taught over the last 4 or 5 years through the academy have any financial means. And the work they're doing it's beyond anything us in the Western world are doing in documenting their societies. So
I think if I can add, I think this question applies to the whole history of journalism and photography. And yes, I do agree. Class does dictate what we know about the world, but it's been like that ever since. And I do think that photojournalism is way more democratic, if that's the right word, or more accessible than it was back in the day when, as Chris mentioned, only 20, 30 or whatever photographers had enough support to cover the world. I think that number now went up because technology and distribution of imagery is gazillion times cheaper and accessible than it was 20 years ago.
And I was trying to pick up on that when I was trying to challenge AI when it was asking me questions and not wanting to answer because my view is not the right way. My view is not right. I was trained in that original classic era of photojournalism that came out of through the 1920s and onward. And it is a very colonialist Western view of the world. But if you go back and study the masters and stuff, it is a formula, and there's certain things that even when I try to teach these other people, I learn so much more from these other cultures when I do the workshops of these young photographers that are just picking up a camera, how they see their environment, how they compose it. I don't force my view or my vision on them. And that's why I'm reluctant to be involved with trying to train AI that this is the way it should be done. Because the way I've done it and my forefathers or 4 generations that have done it ahead of me also had made a lot of mistakes in all this very stereotypical way, the way we portray societies. But yeah, I'll end that there on that question. But Gene is one of my most respected photographers that I admire, So,
and I think we have time for one more question from Bal.
Mm-hmm.
He's asking, could you speak more about how narrative will become more important now to distinguish fact-based images from AI generated?
I know we can all laugh about fact-based images, because I know everyone on this call thinks it's crazy. But when it does, I think it's critical. I always have thought it's critical. It's and I think that's what, I want to say, we've shown you a lot and it's a lot to take in, but ultimately what you're trying to do is contextualize this work at scale alone, right? You're in a studio, you don't have tons of assistants or anything. So these are the tools that are allowing some of this contextualization to happen. And I think that narrative is very important because it shows that the person was there, and it's authorship. Authorship is authentication. When I started at Stanford, they asked me this question: well, how do you know that the pictures are accurate, that you're sending out, that that these photographers are making for you? I was like, because I know the photographers. I know them. They're trained, they're journalists. It doesn't, that's not a question. So I think that authorship is very important in that context. I also think, though, a proper caption is very important too. And, we just showed you the tip of the iceberg, but we're able to get a very good AP caption, from a lot of this stuff too, what you're putting in. And I would say that photographers working in the field now that are, working a 12-hour day, editing, retouching, putting the captions in, all those things, that there are some tools in there that would make their lives much better with the caption in that kind of context. I don't know, Chris, if you,
You can load. It's like an example. I had 90 pictures of those people on the sniper alley, all rejects meant for the trash. I can today, right now, just dump that into DaVinci Resolve and hit 2 buttons, and that thing is going to spit me out a movie with those images. I can tell it, 24, hang on this one, 3. It can do all that for me. It can free me up so I can present stuff with the material. So I'm not going to swim against it. I've never done anything in my career with new technologies, but this one is frightful. I saw images that were friends of mine on Instagram that was talking about the tourist snipers, but there was no credit of the photographers, and people were questioning were the pictures AI, and they looked like they had been, toned a little bit. So even I was questioning, oh, but no, that's Ron's pictures or that's Mike Peterson's picture. I can see it, but there's no credit. There's no credit. So that image almost starts to might become a meme that it's not real. So make sure everything, it must make sure that it's authorized. This was by AFP, or this is by Newsweek, or this is by Reuters, or this is by so-and-so, some verification that images are real, because even I start to question. There's somebody on Instagram who's putting an AI photo and a real historic photo. Can you tell which is real and fake? I failed 50% of the time to identify what was AI and what was real. So that's frightening.
I think we just made the full circle where you end up trusting the source, and the source is the biggest guarantee of veracity and provenance of content, be that images or words. That's how
it's also very easy to use AI to identify. Is this AI? AI is going to identify, no, this is not real. You change a Jim Noctway photo and move something around, it's going to probably know it's not real. It's not a Jim Noctway. Somebody's recreated it.
But what AI cannot tell us if the scene was doctored on the scene.
By the photographer, right?
Yeah.
Is that what
or not necessarily.
It's actually very hard to see what's doctored. Like, definitely not easy. There's no technology that's doing.
Which then brings us back to the source. If the source is credible, then
right. I also think that, like, one other piece of that is that there are less places publishing photojournalism around the world. So you would trust a publication before, and a photographer's name if you knew it, but most of the public do not know the photographer's names, but you trust the place that's going to go through all of those layers of editing and that they're validating it. And I think so that it's like a perfect storm of things that have happened that make things much more questionable.
Yeah.
Sorry to end on that sad note, but it's true. But I also, and I'll end on this, is that I think that technology is part of our lives, and this AI stuff is here, like really here. And I feel like we've got to get ahead of it and then bring it back to journalism, rather than having tech come to us and like say, this is what it is, and then the pictures mean nothing. So I feel like I'm trying to like see, like, I would like to talk to as many photographers as possible, because it's important to have our weight into the governance of what's happening and how we're using these tools.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Christopher.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
To all my friends, thank you for coming to join me. Zia,
all right.
Take care, okay?
Which brings us to the end of this online event. And thank you, everyone, again, and see you soon. Take care.
Thank you, Kira.
Thanks.
Thank you, Zia. Thank you, everybody.